My eldest son left me in the waiting lobby of a rundown nursing home, next to a plastic trash bag containing a few pieces of clothing and an empty promise that he was just going to find a parking spot. I had absolutely no idea that for the past 3 months, he had been secretly replacing my blood pressure medication with low-dose sedatives. While I slumped next to the vending machine, my body too lethargic to stand on its own, he was driving straight to the courthouse with a forged medical power of attorney to seize total control of my construction company and my house. The feeling of being drugged is not like in the movies. You don't suddenly pass out or fall into a deep coma immediately. It is much more insidious. It's like you are trying to wade through a thick stream of muddy water, where every thought is dragged down, and your eyes seem to carry the weight of 1,000 pounds. I managed to drag myself into the rigid plastic chair of the Oak Creek nursing home, trying to piece together what was happening. My ears were ringing, only hearing the agonizing ticking of the clock on the peeling wall, and the smell of bleach mixed with stale cabbage soup wafting up from the kitchen. An hour passed. Then 2 hours. The elderly people sitting around me in wheelchairs looked like forgotten ghosts. Some muttered to themselves, while others just stared blankly into the void. I tried to reach into my coat pocket to find my phone, but my fingers were so shaky and numb that I couldn't grasp anything. That was when my clouded mind began to piece back together the fragments of the past few months. Marcus, my respectable and successful eldest son, suddenly moved in with me. After his investment firm encountered a minor hiccup, he started showing an excessive amount of concern for my health. "You look so tired, Dad," he would often say, with a perfectly soothing tone. "You've worked your whole life. Let me help you sort your daily pills into the organizer. You're very forgetful." I trusted him. That was the son I had raised, the child I had taught how to hold a hammer, how to pour the first concrete foundation blocks for the family business. I let him arrange those little white pills into the plastic box every morning. And so, my mornings waking up started to become heavier. The contracts I read began to blur. I often dozed off during meetings, something I had never experienced in my 40 years of navigating the business world. Marcus was always there, smiling anxiously in front of the partners, gently explaining that my dad has recently started showing signs of cognitive decline. He wasn't caring for me. He was orchestrating a play, and I was the blindfolded lead actor. A voice with no hint of surprise. "Your son finished signing your admission papers at the administrative office 2 hours ago. He said you needed absolute rest due to paranoia." By the 3rd hour, a tired-looking nurse approached me. She held a clipboard of files in her hand. "Mr. Elias?" she called. I opened my mouth to speak, intending to scream that I wasn't paranoid, that I was the owner of a multi-million-dollar construction company, that I was just waiting for him to park the car. But that damn chemical in my blood made my tongue stiffen. The words spilling out of my mouth were nothing but mumbled, broken sounds. "P. Park," I whispered, raising a trembling finger pointing toward the glass door. The nurse looked at me with pitying eyes, the kind of look people give to items about to be thrown into a scrapyard. "He's gone, sir. He paid for a month in advance and said he would come back to visit when you are mentally stable. Come now, let me help you to bed." At that moment, I realized the most bitter truth about old age. When a young, healthy person wearing a suit, speaking fluently and appearing caring says something, people will always believe them over an old man slurring his words and staggering around. Marcus had calculated everything. He knew if he dumped me here in this state, no one would question the medical power of attorney he was submitting to the court. He stripped away my dignity before stripping away my assets. The nurse grabbed my arm, attempting to pull me up. I used my last bit of waning strength to pull away, causing the plastic chair to scrape against the floor, creating a piercing screech. That small commotion caught the attention of a doctor in a white coat walking down the hallway. He stepped forward, frowning to give a reprimand, but then stopped dead in his tracks. His gaze swept over my wrinkled face, dripping with cold sweat. "Uncle Elias?" The young man's voice rang out, carrying utter astonishment. I lifted my heavy eyes to look, and it took a few seconds, through the fog of the sedatives, for me to recognize those familiar features. Resolute dark eyes, a square jawline. It was Dr. David Chen. 20 years ago, David was just a scrawny orphan, standing shivering on my porch with a medical school acceptance letter, but not a penny to his name. My wife, A woman who always believed in kindness, convinced me to use our family savings to fully fund his tuition. "It's me, Dr. Chen," the nurse quickly explained. "A new patient, suffering from severe dementia and paranoia. His son just brought him in." David didn't answer the nurse. He knelt on one knee on the dirty lobby floor, using his hand to shine a small penlight into my pupils. The sharpness of a doctor and the empathy of someone who once received a favor instantly connected. He saw that my pupils reacted sluggishly. He checked my pulse, finding my heartbeat unusually sluggish rather than erratic from agitation or paranoia. "Uncle Elias," David whispered, just loud enough for the two of us to hear. He tightly held my rough hand. "You don't have dementia. You're being drugged. Is that right?" A hot tear rolled down my cheek, the only liquid in my body right now not frozen by the sedatives. I nodded, a slow and heavy nod of a father who had just been fatally stabbed by his own flesh and blood. David stood up abruptly, turning to the nurse. "Bring a blood draw kit to exam room 3 immediately. Skip the normal admission procedures. I will personally take this case." The nurse's eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded and hurried away. David helped me stand up, placing my arm over his shoulder. His youth and sturdiness seemed to pass a fragile ray of hope onto me. 30 minutes later, in the quiet examination room, a needle pierced my vein. David personally fed the blood sample into the hospital's rapid analyzer. The whirring sound of the machine echoed in the silent space. When the results printed out, David's face hardened. He stepped forward, placing the paper on my lap. "High-dose benzodiazepines, mixed with beta blockers," David said through gritted teeth. "This is not a medical error. This is intentional poisoning. They kept you in a semi-conscious state long enough for you to lose the ability to resist, but not a dose high enough to immediately endanger your life." I stared at the stark black numbers on the white paper. All the feelings of lethargy, sleepiness, and brain fog seemed to be incinerated by a cold fire erupting in my chest. Anger. Not a screaming, roaring anger, but a quiet, deep, and razor-sharp anger. My son had used medicine as a weapon to steal my life. He just didn't account for one thing. The person holding the test result protecting me tonight was the exact orphan he had once mocked as money-wasting garbage 20 years ago. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air rush into my lungs. "Keep this report a secret, David," I whispered, my voice starting to become clearer as the fury increased my heart rate. "Don't call the police just yet." "Why?" David frowned. "This is a criminal offense. Because if we call the police now, he will just plead that he mixed up the pill bottles." I gripped the test result in my hand. "I want to wait. Wait until he officially submits that damn medical power of attorney to the court, when he uses a lie to rob me legally. That is when I will crush him." That night, I slept on a folding bed in Dr. David's on-call room. It was my first sleep in over 3 months where I wasn't pushed into an artificial coma by sedatives. When I woke up the next morning, the sunlight shining through the curtains looked strangely sharp. The thick, sluggish feeling, like thousands of bees buzzing in my brain, had vanished. My mind was crystal clear, and along with that clarity, the pain also became sharper. I had spent my entire life building solid foundations with concrete and steel, only to realize that my own family's foundation was built on deceit. At exactly 9 in the morning, the on-call room door opened. David walked in, followed by a woman in a charcoal gray suit. That was Evelyn Hayes, my corporate attorney for the past 15 years. She was the type of person who never wasted time on empty pleasantries. Evelyn walked straight to the small desk, slammed her leather briefcase down, and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "Good morning, Elias," Evelyn said, her eyes narrowing as she closely examined my face. "To be honest, you look much better than what Marcus described in the emergency petition submitted to the family court yesterday morning. Did he file the papers already?" I asked, my voice now having regained its usual warm and resonant tone, no longer the faint, broken sound from last night. "Filed," Evelyn pushed a folder with a red court stamp toward me. "A petition for emergency medical proxy and comprehensive asset control. The court temporarily approved it at 8 a.m. this morning based on the medical records Marcus provided, plus the fact that you, seemingly voluntarily, entered a nursing home last night." I picked up the folder, and my fingers were no longer trembling. I read every line, and every single word in it felt like a slap to my honor. Marcus had described me as an old man with severe amnesia, frequently wandering the streets in a state of agitation, failing to recognize relatives, and having lost the ability to make basic financial decisions. He even attached a forged testimony from a neighbor, saying they saw me standing blankly in front of my house in the middle of the night. But what outraged me the most was the psychological evaluation section. Marcus wrote, "The patient frequently acts hostile, suspecting his children want to harm him, which is a typical paranoid symptom of middle-stage Alzheimer's." Let's pause Elias's story for a moment. What Marcus was doing here wasn't just ordinary financial fraud, but an incredibly sinister psychological manipulation tactic called medical gaslighting combined with elder abuse. Abusers usually don't use physical force because physical force leaves marks. Instead, they use medical care itself as a weapon. When Marcus turned his father's natural reactions like skepticism or resistance into symptoms of paranoia, he granted himself a perfect protective shield. Anything Elias said to accuse his son right now would be brushed aside by those around him with the thought, "Poor thing, the old man has gone senile." The ultimate cruelty of medical gaslighting lies in the fact that the person robbing you of your life plays the role of a deeply sacrificial caregiver, receiving society's sympathy while you are locked inside your own body and your own voice. The rustling sound of Evelyn turning pages pulled me back to reality. "Evelyn," I said, lowering my voice, "you've been a lawyer for a long time. What do you think his next move is?" Evelyn pulled out another piece of paper, a statement from a commercial real estate brokerage. "He's not letting the grass grow under his feet, Elias. With the temporary power of attorney in hand, Marcus officially listed your house on the market this morning. But that's just the tip of the iceberg." She pointed at an attached email excerpt. "Your construction company. Marcus is secretly negotiating a fire sale of all the company's shares and heavy machinery to Vanguard Group, your biggest competitor, for less than half their true value." I smirked. "Why does he have to sell off so hastily?" "Because he is desperate," David interjected, as the young doctor placed a hot cup of black coffee on the table for me. "I asked a friend in finance to do a preliminary check. Marcus's investment firm isn't just facing a minor hiccup. He over-leveraged himself in the crypto market and is carrying a massive margin debt. He needs millions of dollars in cash within the next 15 days to avoid being foreclosed on by the bank and prosecuted for defrauding investors." Everything suddenly became clear. There was no illness, there was no care, only the greed and panic of a drowning man, ready to drown his own father to use as a life preserver. "So what do we do now?" David asked, his eyes filled with worry. "Call the police and release this blood test?" He gently patted the toxicology report lying on the table. "No," I replied immediately, and both Evelyn and David looked at me in surprise. In the construction industry, we have a principle. When you discover a building is built on a rotting foundation, you don't use a sledgehammer to smash every single brick. That is exhausting and dangerous. Instead, you place explosives at the exact main load-bearing pillars, step back, and let the building's own weight crush itself. The blood test only proves I was drugged, but Marcus will hire expensive lawyers to argue that there was a mix-up at the pharmacy, or that he didn't do it on purpose, I explained, the coldness in my voice surprising even myself. "I don't just want to save my assets. I want him to pay the price for robbing me of my human rights." I turned to Evelyn, smiling a smile completely devoid of any warmth. "Evelyn, do you remember the union security clauses we embedded into the company's charter 10 years ago after the workers' strike?" Evelyn's eyes suddenly lit up. As a sharp lawyer, she immediately understood what I was intending to do. The corners of her lips curled into an approving smile. "My God, Elias. Marcus's medical power of attorney might bypass the family court, but it is completely worthless before the labor union." "Exactly," I nodded, picking up the coffee cup to take a sip. The harsh bitterness spreading in my mouth made me feel more awake than ever. Let Marcus think he has won. Let him sign the contract to sell the company to Vanguard. And when the ink dries, we'll spring the trap. For the next 2 days, I had to do the hardest thing in my life. Continue playing the role of an abandoned, crazy old man. To trap Marcus, I couldn't just walk out of the hospital openly right away. I had to let him believe that his medical proxy shield was invincible. Dr. David falsified a medical record, updating the internal system to say that I was still in a state of confusion and in need of mild sedation. Because of this, Marcus was completely at ease. He didn't show his face to check on me even once. He didn't even bother to call. Once a person has resolved to cast aside their conscience, they dare not look back at their victim. He was too busy selling out my life's blood. In David's tiny on-call room, where the smell of medical alcohol mixed with burnt roasted coffee, Evelyn and I spread a slew of documents over the cold stainless steel table. She explained to me about the invisible noose we were weaving. The union security clause, Evelyn said, tapping her ballpoint pen on the copy of the company charter. 10 years ago, after the scaffolding collapse accident in the East District, you resolutely included this clause to ensure workers would never be mass fired if the company changed hands. Any sale of core assets must have the direct signature of the CEO, which is you, and must be witnessed and verified by the regional labor union representative. And what if Marcus uses the temporary medical proxy to sign on my behalf? I asked, even though I vaguely guessed the answer in my heart. That's exactly his fatal flaw, Evelyn smirked, the sharp smile of a courtroom predator. State corporate law states very clearly, a medical proxy is only authorized to manage personal finances to cover the patient's care costs. They absolutely do not have the right to liquidate or sell off a corporate entity with union elements unless there is an official competency hearing ruling from the court with a cross-examination by an independent specialist doctor. Marcus did not have that ruling at all. He only had an emergency power of attorney, temporarily approved by the court, thanks to a filthy nursing home medical record and the sedatives he secretly dropped into my water glass. Furthermore, he was deceiving Vanguard Group, hiding the union clause to accelerate the transaction speed. When he signs the contract to sell the company and receives the deposit, I said, feeling the pulse throbbing at my temples, he's not just violating the company charter, he's committing federal corporate financial fraud, federal wire fraud. Evelyn finished the sentence, her voice firm. He is fraudulently selling an asset he has no legal standing to sell, aiming to misappropriate millions of dollars from other investors to pay off personal debts. The contract will be immediately void, but the deposit money he receives will turn him into an undeniable criminal. The plan was clear, but for it to succeed, I had to wait. Waiting wears a person down in the cruelest of ways. I sat in the on-call room of the Oak Creek nursing home, looking through the narrow window slit down at the cracked concrete courtyard. I witnessed other neglected elderly people, sitting in wheelchairs looking out at the nursing home gates, waiting for children who would never arrive. I realized this bitter truth. Marcus had planned for me to rot here until I died. He didn't intend to take me back home. Once the company was sold and the house was liquidated, I would just be a faint name in the welfare files, befuddled by drugs and forgotten by the world. I thought about Marcus when he was little. I thought about the day I taught him how to ride a bike, his tiny hands gripping my shirt tightly in fear. My heart ached, a physical pain like it was being crushed. But then, the resentment surged up, cold and hard like the steel bars buried beneath a foundation. I stopped crying. The greatest enemy of the truth isn't a lie, but misplaced forgiveness. 4 days later, Evelyn's phone rang. It was an internal source from my construction company, a chief accountant who had been loyal to me for over 2 decades. It's done. Evelyn hung up, turning to look at me. Marcus just signed the preliminary transfer agreement with Vanguard. He received a $2 million deposit into an escrow account to temporarily stop the bank from foreclosing on his crypto firm. The final purchase and sale contract signing and asset handover will take place at 10 a.m. tomorrow in your company's main boardroom. I stood up. My old joints cracked after many days of inactivity, but inside me, a blazing fire was burning away all the exhaustion. No more weakness, no more lethargy from the sedatives. David, I turned to look at the young doctor. Are the toxicology report and the medical certificate ready? David nodded firmly, patting his black briefcase. Everything is ready. The blood benzodiazepine level report proving you were poisoned with sedatives for 3 months, along with a comprehensive mental health certificate signed this morning by the head of psychiatry at the Central Hospital himself. You are completely lucid, Mr. Elias. Evelyn, I continued, what about the labor union? Tom Wilkins, the construction union's chief representative, will be present in the boardroom at 9:45 a.m. tomorrow. Evelyn smiled. He is furious hearing that your precious son intends to sell out the blood and sweat of the workers so cheaply. He will demand to see Marcus's legal standing with his own eyes before Vanguard can sign. That evening, I walked out of the Oak Creek nursing home through the back door. No more dirty plastic trash bags. Evelyn had brought me a custom-tailored dark blue suit, the suit I usually wore when negotiating the most important projects. When I retied my tie in front of the foggy mirror in the restroom, I didn't see a senile, sickly abandoned old man. I saw a man ready to reclaim his life. Marcus thought he had swept away all obstacles cleanly. He thought his tidy cruelty left no traces. But he forgot one thing I always taught him when he was young. Never build a house on ground that you haven't measured yourself. Tomorrow morning, I would go remeasure that ground, and I will pull his entire building of lies down. At exactly 9:55 a.m., I stood before the giant oak door of the multi-million-dollar main boardroom that I had personally designed and built 20 years ago. Inside, through the frosted glass partition, I could see silhouettes leaning over the table. The air carried the faint scent of expensive coffee and fresh paper. This luxury heavily contrasted with the smell of stale soup and bleach of the Oak Creek nursing home where Marcus intended to bury me. I pushed the door open forcefully. The brass hinges let out a dull creak, cutting through the quiet space. Marcus was holding a gold-plated fountain pen, hovering just above the signature line of the thick merger contract. Opposite him were 3 senior executives from Vanguard Group, looking full of complacency. When I entered the room, with my crisp, dark blue suit, steady steps, and razor-sharp gaze, the pen in Marcus's hand dropped clack onto the glass table. The blood drained completely from his face. For a moment, I saw his eyes widen, reflecting the absolute panic of a person seeing a ghost rise from the grave. "Dad," Marcus stammered, his voice thin and shattered. But his lying instinct recovered too quickly. He immediately shot up, rushing toward me with the fake expression of a distressed son. "Oh my God, Dad, what are you doing here? You weren't supposed to leave the medical facility. Where are the nurses? You are in a very severe stage of paranoia." He reached out, intending to grab my arm, the same way he did when he dragged me into the nursing home. But I didn't back down. I forcefully swatted his hand away. The swat didn't use much force, but was cold enough to make him freeze. "Enough, Marcus," I said. My voice rang out clearly and warmly, echoing off the oak walls. There was no lethargy. There were no whispers. The play is over. The 3 Vanguard executives looked at each other in confusion. The head, a bald man named Richard, frowned and spoke up. "Marcus, what is the meaning of this? You told us your father had completely lost his legal capacity and you had full legal authority to liquidate the company? That is true." Marcus hastily turned to Richard, beads of sweat starting to form on his forehead. He quickly pulled the temporary medical power of attorney out of his briefcase. "I have a court order. He isn't in his right mind. Please excuse us. I will call security to take him back to the hospital right now." "You will not call anyone." Tom Wilkins, the construction union's chief representative, stepped forward from behind me. The rugged, burly figure of a man who had spent his whole life on construction sites made Marcus take a step back. Tom slammed his hand hard on the table, right next to Vanguard's contract. "Richard, I don't know what Marcus promised you, but according to Union Security Clause number 4, any sale of core assets must have Elias's direct signature and must be verified by me. That cheap piece of medical paper of his has no value in liquidating a unionized company. If you transfer the money to him, the labor union will strike all of Vanguard's projects statewide this afternoon." Richard's expression changed instantly. From a superior figure, he shifted into a state of extreme high alert. He glared at Marcus with daggers in his eyes. "Did you deceive us, Marcus? You don't actually have a competency ruling from the court? I am processing the paperwork." Marcus desperately patched together his lies. "My dad has dementia. Look at him. He's paranoid." That was when Dr. David Chen stepped up, placing a sealed envelope from the Central Hospital onto the table. "As a medical doctor, I can confirm that the patient Elias is perfectly lucid." David pulled out the toxicology report, sliding it toward Vanguard and Marcus. "The only reason he has shown signs of confusion over the past 3 months is because someone was continuously poisoning him with high doses of benzodiazepines, disguised as blood pressure medication." We have the blood evidence and the leftover pills in the plastic organizer at home. The entire boardroom sank into a deathly silence. Richard from Vanguard Group quickly retracted his fountain pen. He slammed the contract folder shut. The deal is off. Marcus, we will demand the bank immediately freeze the $2 million deposit in the escrow account. And Vanguard's lawyers will sue you for financial fraud. They walked out of the room, not bothering to look back at Marcus even once. Only Evelyn, David, Tom, my own biological son, and I were left. Marcus slumped down into the leather chair. His legs were trembling uncontrollably. The successful businessman facade had shattered, revealing his true form, a failed, cowardly, and ruthless gambler. Dad. Marcus looked up at me, tears starting to stream down his face. This time, they were real tears. Tears of fear upon realizing he was about to lose everything. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I was pushed into a corner. Creditors were threatening me. My wife was demanding a divorce. I only meant to temporarily borrow your company to save my family. I am your son. People often say, family is where you will always be forgiven, no matter what mistakes you make. But should forgiveness be an unlimited blank check? When a child falls into debt and begs for help, that is a tragedy that can be shared. But when that child plans to poison his father every morning, coldly watching his father become lethargic, lose his dignity, and then cruelly dumps him in a rundown nursing home to steal his assets, then it's no longer just a mistake. That is calculated cruelty. Demanding a father forgive the act of stripping away his very life and voice, just because they share the same blood, isn't that too cruel of a moral coercion? Sometimes, refusing to forgive is not about hatred. It is the only way to protect the ultimate boundary of self-respect. I stood watching Marcus cry. My heart, the thing that used to skip a beat every time I saw him scrape his knee at 5 years old, was now as still as a frozen lake. When you left me at that nursing home, I said, my voice deep and sad but resolute. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't even say my own name. You didn't just steal my money, Marcus. You stole my mind, stole my dignity, all to trade for a few months of delaying your debts. I turned my back and walked away. Evelyn has submitted all the evidence to the sheriff and the FBI regarding the charges of elder poisoning and interstate fraud. Call your criminal defense lawyer, Marcus. I am no longer your safe harbor. I walked out of the boardroom, leaving Marcus's sobbing wails to fade away behind the oak doors. A few months later, Marcus was convicted and sent to prison on charges of financial fraud and intentional elder abuse. His house was foreclosed on by the bank, and his wife filed for divorce in the very first week. I didn't attend the trial. My heart was broken, and I had no desire to look back at those broken pieces ever again. I regained my company, but decided to step back. I handed operational control over to the loyal chief accountant and allocated a large portion of shares to the union's support fund. On Christmas Eve that year, I didn't sit alone in my massive, cold house. I was sitting in the warm living room of Dr. David Chen's family. The orphans my wife and I had once sponsored were now all grown up. They gathered around me, pouring me hot cups of tea and laughing joyfully. As I watched the fire crackling in the fireplace, I finally understood something that took nearly 70 years of life to truly grasp. Family isn't always the people who share your DNA. Family is the people who never take advantage of your weakness, never abandon you in the dark, and are willing to stand up and protect your voice when you cannot speak for yourself. And tonight, surrounded by genuine love, I knew that this old contractor Elias had finally found a solid foundation on which to rest his soul.